Welcome to Split Time, everybody. I'm your host, Garrett McCaffrey, and this week we're tackling a topic that involves both high school swimmers and club swimmers. Now, there's a lot of crossover, and as we enter this championship season, we're seeing a lot of fast swimming all across the country. And the conflict that we're talking about is the balance that high school swimmers have to make between their club commitments and their high school team commitments. Now, who better to talk about this topic than a guy who's not only a high school coach right now in Southwest Missouri, but also has experience coaching on the club side. Coming in to us from Springfield, Missouri, Shawn Klosterman. Shawn, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, no problem. Great to hear from you.
So this is a topic that you're used to, and it's because a couple years ago when you moved into Springfield area, you started up a club program because there wasn't really any other option out there. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, I had been in Springfield where the colleges each had a USA club, and I moved about an hour away to Webb City that had its own pool in the district, and I came in, there was no USA presence in the area, and started my own from scratch just because it was sorely needed.
So talk about the transition you've seen within the high school rules within the state of Missouri since you started. I know they were a little bit stricter when you first started dealing with them, but now they've kind of lightened up. Can you explain that transition?
Yeah, what it was is swimming has been given a special exception in Missouri, and it took a long time to get it. But when I first moved to Webb City and started this, I'm still not allowed to coach kids in USA that go to my high school during the rest of the school year outside of the season. But back then, we also had the restriction that kids couldn't work out with their clubs and go to club meets during the high school season, regardless of who the coach was. And that's the part that got relaxed, is now during girls' season, I can let one of my high school girls go to the Pro-Am in Oklahoma City in December, where before I wouldn't have been allowed to do that.
And that's what it comes down to with a lot of these kids. Their club coaches are a little bit more asking when it comes to their time. They need a little bit more of their time because they're used to a year-round commitment for our sport, which is going back to the issue to begin with. Swimming is different than football, is different than basketball. It's a year-round sport that requires kids to be in the pool. I mean, almost 50 weeks a year. So that commitment creates a little bit of conflict. When you've been dealing with club coaches now that you're just on the high school coaching level, how much do you communicate? How much do you open that door of communication with those coaches? And if you have, how much has that helped or hurt your cause?
Well, that's been the best part of what I'm doing now is since I started the club here, I hired a guy who was one of my former swimmers to take it over, and we have a great relationship. We constantly are talking about the kids. We know exactly what each other has been doing with them and where we're headed. And so we get to kind of work as a team, which, I see that as the ideal, as the way it should be. I can see why it's not always like that in other places. I will tell you that if I were to look at another job, before I even interviewed with the school, I would be calling the local clubs to find out what the relationships were like and if there was even a chance of building one. It's that important to developing an athlete.
Shawn, how important is that high school state championship? I think it's one of the most exciting atmospheres in our sport. What do you think kids are missing out when they choose to just train club and swim through the high school season? What are they missing when they do that?
It was so much easier in Alaska because we got to have that experience without the conflict. But it's kind of heartbreaking for me because I know it's such a big experience, such a fun experience. A coach I know in Springfield, the coach at Kickapoo, he kind of explained it the best. Was he got a boy, came in for senior year only. They started a team at his school, and Jason got to coach him along with the other schools he coaches. And he'd been developed in the local clubs. And Jason just kind of had the attitude of, well, I didn't develop him to here. He hasn't really been my kid. What can I give him that maybe the clubs had a harder time with? And he focused on giving the kid a team experience and getting him ready for the college atmosphere through his high school program. And that's part of what it is. It's atmosphere. It is very different. Some clubs have a really great team atmosphere, but a lot of clubs just don't have the numbers to have that kind of excitement. And a lot of club championships aren't set up to generate that kind of excitement. It is a big experience.
I couldn't agree more. Just going back to my swimming career, I feel like it was one of the most exciting meets that I was ever at. And just having seen over the past few years the different types of meet setups, I would say that that high school atmosphere is like no other atmosphere out there. There's not ever the same kind of excitement. There's not ever the same kind of peer recognition that these kids are getting out of high school. But you touched on a point that, from the club coach perspective, I can relate to. You're developing this kid. You're developing talent. You're putting in a full 52 weeks a year, making sure that these kids are doing exactly what it takes to reach that level. And then during the high school season, you come in and the newspapers are interviewing his high school coach and not his club coach, who is probably a little bit more responsible for it. But ultimately, don't we have to remember who it's about? I mean, it's about the swimmer ultimately, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And you hit on something there. We had a signing ceremony at our high school. Even TV crews came out to watch a swimmer sign or letter to jury last year. And, some of the other sport coaches thought it was kind of strange, but we actually had Jared, our club coach, there. I stood on one side, Jared stood on the other, and I thought that was a pretty good testament to the relationship we have, and I wish that every area could have that kind of relationship.
Shawn, are there certain swimmers who should pass up their high school career?
That is a tough one. I'd like to say no, but I know everyone's situation is different. I actually had a guy at a local high school around here when I was coaching the club who passed up his senior high school season, and it was kind of hard on everybody because his coach wasn't real happy with me, and we knew we were passing up some of the experience. But if the rules were still the way they were in Missouri, I've had other athletes that if they had U.S. Open times or the Pro-Am was a real big deal for them, I might have told them not to swim high school. And I'd like to think that I would have found a way to make it work that we could do both. It kind of depends what state you're in and what your situation is. And I know a lot of schools will fill swim coaching positions with people who've never been involved with swimming before, and that makes it a lot tougher to choose to do high school. But hopefully in that situation, that new coach will use the club coach as the resource to help to keep that athlete doing what they're supposed to be doing.
And I think that's the ideal situation for both the club and the high school coach. But there's a lot of states out there that still have those old school rules in place. They still have those restrictions. And when you're talking about taking 2 to 3 months out of your season away from your primary coach, that's an issue. And I think in those circumstances, it's understandable why an athlete would pass up the excitement. And I hate to see it because he's really missing out, or he or she is really missing out on some peer recognition, on some team camaraderie, and on that high school state meet. That high school state meet, I mean, you want to talk about shaving and tapering. That's obviously a huge advantage, and that's one of the reasons they go so fast. But I think a huge reason we see kids choose to shave and taper for that meet is because they can take advantage of the energy in that situation. So, Shawn, right. I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's a great topic. It's got to be continue discussion on a topic like this until we reach some kind of consensus. And like we were kind of talked about before it started, it would be nice if we could go to the high school associations and explain the dilemma, but it would be pretty tough to just take swimming and make an exemption just for the sport of swimming. So again, Shawn, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. And I want to remind you guys back at home, we're trying to get more participation here on Split Time. We want to hear your opinions on it. But for starters, if you have opinions on this topic, go ahead and leave comments. There's comments boxes right below here. We want to hear your voice. We want to hear your opinion. And right now, at least we have that as a way to get feedback. It's also a spot where you could suggest other Split Time topics. And feel free to use that. And people aren't taking enough advantage of those comments. So please, I encourage you guys to do that. But for now, Shawn Klosterman, Garrett McCaffrey, that's your Split Time.